going to be joined by key government officials tomorrow to go through the fine print, so to speak. If I were to ask you for the #1 clarification that you would like from either the Revenue Secretary or the CBEC Chief, what would it be?
So a little different from what everybody has been discussing, and here is my issue. In the GST, we are likely to see on place of supply and even on taxation, disputes between state and state. Even when you talk about this issue of, the 12 nautical miles in which state can effectively tax. Now, what I'd really like to ask is, assuming there is a dispute between two states, it is very different from the disputes we know today, which is assessee versus tax collector.
Right.
What happens when two states have a difference of view? What is the dispute resolution mechanism? And what is the status of the assessee while the two states war it out? And from that perspective, it's the first time we're going to face this. And I think it's very important that we have an answer for this. Otherwise, a lot of these disputes could be, I pay tax while two states are actually debating it.
And that is an important point that you make. Let me bring in our other panelists as well. Hari, #1 question for the CBEC Chief or the Revenue Secretary?
My question will be, why was the potential credit on telecom towers and pipelines, which was featured in the November edition of the model GST law, seems to have been deleted in the current law that is being debated in the parliament? I mean, I know this has been an issue which is at debate in courts, and there have been several judgments on this. So did they fall to what the existing scenario is? Because considering the fact that GST is supposed to eliminate cascading, they could have as well gone ahead and given this benefit, and they mentioned it that they will give it over a period of 3 years. So I'm a little surprised. Why would a GST objective do away with this, and you go back to the good old system that we have today? So I don't know. I would ask, why was that sudden retrograde step taken?
Okay, so that's Hari's question. Let me then come to Prateek. Prateek, your question for the Revenue Secretary, the Finance Minister, or the CBEC Chief?
I have two questions. One is on anti-profiteering. I can't label the point that let the market forces drive the prices. And when sales tax got converted into VAT, or when they had introduced NVAT credit in 1994, no such provision was introduced. So why there is a need now felt, and whether we have enough time given to the industry for this transition? And second question is, why not have GST from 1st of September rather than having from 1st of July? Because, as somebody said, that chutney could be sweet, sour, or bitter, and if it is coming from 1st of July, it'd be more bitter than sweet, I'm afraid.
Okay. Sachin, very quickly, your question.
Well, I think the Finance Minister talked about a global market, unified market in India. So my question to him is that, is he confirming that no more check post, no more waybills, no more entry permits exist once the GST is introduced? Because this is one of the biggest concern and one of the point of even corruption for that matter, where the free movement of goods are restricted in India. Earlier signals were not in favor, but I think today what he said was that there is a seamless market where there is no controls.
Yes. Absolutely. Mani, your question.
I would say that the input tax credit provisions which have been put in the GST law need to be changed a bit. Possibly that will happen once the expert committee gives its recommendations. Because while we talk of one nation, one tax, while we talk of seamless supply chain, the input tax credit provisions put an enormous amount of restrictions in terms of taking credit. Ideally, in all the other jurisdictions where we have seen this, we have seen that if you incur an expenditure in relation to your business, that should be available to you as a credit. But the present input tax credit provisions that we have in the law, which is being debated in Parliament, is riddled with restrictions, requirements, what the buyer of goods needs to do, what he needs to satisfy, what is eligible for, what is not eligible for. And it's very difficult for people to figure out what credits are eligible or not eligible. So this is something where possibly there needs to be some kind of a rework.
Kind of clarification. All right, Rashmi, over to you for your question.
While I agree with Prateek that anti-profiteering is something on which we need to get more clarification, and personally I was not very satisfied with the way the FM was answering the question, the two big issues which I might ask is, first of all, we are saying that the government is ready, but I want to know whether revenue officers are ready for this or not, whether they are properly trained, whether there are proper enough material given to them, understanding given to them, because they are going to be one of the key factors in implementation of such a mammoth thing. And secondly, what I need to understand is that even though FM clarified that there is a provision for exemption, when you are talking about banking or telecom sector, are we really ready, or the government is really ready to carve out an exemption for such sectors or not? So those would be my two issues.
Your questions. All right, Biren, your question to the Finance Minister.
Yeah, while most of them are already covered by all my colleagues, key question is particularly for sectors which are outside the GST regime, real estate, petro and liquor for human consumption. While there is specific exclusion in the constitution for liquor for human consumption, for all these three, procurement will be under GST, what I understand, and output will not be covered by GST levy. So in that case, tax cost will be huge for these sectors. Then what is that they intend to, or what is that they are planning to offer for these sectors to give a breathing space, particularly while tax costs will shoot up more under GST regime? That is one. And second, again, core key issues like, say for example, constitution specifically exclude liquor for human consumption. So there are many such more issues where what they are planning to draw a line and define in such a way so that these kind of provisions are not prone to litigation. Probably that is something which is expected by the industry.
All right, and Arun, finally, one quick question from you.
I think I actually go along with Mr. Mehta. Very important point. Mr. Arun Jaitley, the Finance Minister, said, what's the harm? Why should anyone oppose if anti-profiteering authority or agency comes in? I think Mr. Mehta has an excellent point to ponder over. Why shouldn't the competition law administer it? He said, if you have the competition commission, you have the competition law, then why do you need anti-profiteering? I think that's a very compelling argument to ponder over.
All right, Arun, gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on the CNBC TV 18 special coverage.